content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some viewers and listeners. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast does not intend to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior in the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, respect for the victims and their families. Tonight, we're mixing it up with history, mystery, and a little bit of chaos. We're heading to the rugged, lawless terrain of the Wild West, Virginia City, Nevada, to be exact. Nestled in the high desert, this mining boomtown wasn't just a haven for gold and silver seekers, but also for outlaws, swindlers, and gunslingers. Post-Civil War, the allure of fortune brought a wave of desperate men. And where there's desperation, crime is sure to follow. So grab your glasses of wine because we're diving into a world of saloons, shootouts, and the shadowy underworld that shaped one of America's most infamous Wild West towns. It's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. I am your host, Winnie Schrader, and tonight we're going to go back in time. We're going to go to the Wild West, the frontier, the time in our history that was rich in crime and lawlessness. And I wanted to get an expert, which Janice Oberding, who is, she lives and breathes the Wild West, Virginia City, Reno, and all that. So she's got some really cool stories of that whole time era and what happened back in the day, because it just seems like it was just the Wild West. Everybody was shooting everybody, and the sheriffs of the town would just turn their cheek or turn away and just say whatever. I mean, it was just so, it's not like what it is today, but it's pretty cool to look back at those stories. And a lot of them have, you know, paranormal stories attached to these. And Janice does also delve into the paranormal side of things. So I like to do these kind of stories because it kind of brings two genres together for a love of a topic that is just blowing up all over the place. So welcome to the show, Janice.
Thank you for having me, Winnie.
Okay, so you are having an upcoming book coming out called Virginia City, Amazing, Somewhat Quirky History, and you're hoping to have that out by Halloween. So I'll make sure I get a link up when the book is available, and I will post about it on all my social medias, which you can find all my links. Just hit my link tree. It takes you everywhere you need to go to find me. Okay, Janet, so we're in Nevada, Reno, Virginia City in the late 1890s, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have Elizabeth Potts. Tell me what happened with Elizabeth Potts.
Well, Elizabeth actually lived in Carlin, which is about 250 miles east of Reno. And she lived in Carlin with her husband and her two children. And for whatever reason, an ex-lover, some said an ex-husband, came to visit her, Mr. Fawcett, and she killed him. She shot and killed him. And yeah, surprisingly, when her husband came home, she said, Josiah, I've killed Mr. Fawcett. Now you have to help me bury his body in the basement. So
welcome home, honey.
So like a good husband, he did. He buried Mr. Fawcett's body in the basement, and he decided that he and Elizabeth and the children should leave Carlin after this. So they packed up and left. And shortly after they moved, a newspaper woman who ran a column in Carlin and Elko called The Busy Bee moved into the house. And she was excited because she was hearing all these ghostly noises every night. And she was writing in her column, there's a ghost in this house and he knocks on the bed every night. He knocks on the walls, knocks on the doors. And then she got tired of it.
Oh, okay.
So she sent her husband down to the basement to find out what was going on. He went down there, and of course, he discovered the body of Mr. Fawcett because I think a hand was probably sticking out. Some appendage was a hand or foot or something.
Bones.
So, yes. He called the sheriff, and the sheriff figured it out. The last person to have seen Fawcett was Mrs. Potts. So they chased Mr. and Mrs. Potts down and arrested them for murder. And she said, well, he deserved to be killed. She never told exactly why, but he deserved to be killed. And poor Josiah said, I didn't kill him. All I did was bury his body. But it was...
Yeah. If you think about it, Janice, can you imagine being Josiah and she's like, you need to help me? Would you say no to her?
No, have you seen pictures of her? No, probably not. She looked like a pretty mean person. So they were both hanged for this, for the murder. And when I wrote the story, I always say that she was pointed out by a ghost, because actually if old Josiah hadn't, not Josiah, Mr. Fawcett hadn't have been making noises down in the basement, they probably would have never known that he had been murdered. So I do believe his ghost may have come forth to show that she can't get away with murdering me. So anyway, she remains the only woman ever to be executed in the state of Nevada.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. Does Nevada, do they still have the death penalty now, or are they?
Oh, we do. They haven't implemented, I mean, they may have given it to somebody, but it's been a few years since they have implemented. But yes, it's still there on the books. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. And there have been other stories too, where bodies have been buried somewhere in the house and people are having experiences that lead to the finding of a body or some type of evidence that can prove somebody's guilt. I mean, I've talked about the Greenbrier ghost. I've talked about the Red Barn House. So this is really cool. And I think that's really neat that you can combine those two genres and how you can solve crimes with a ghost. I think this is so cool. And it's so Hollywood. I mean, you had that movie Stir of Echoes with Kevin Bacon. That's exactly what it was. He was having paranormal experiences that led him to find a woman's body buried in the wall. So it's really neat. And it sounds like Hollywood, but I love this stuff, Janice. So she was hanged. She was the first woman to ever be executed in Nevada. Now, we are going to jump ahead a little bit. Is that correct? With Bob White. Who was Bob White and what did he do?
Okay, Bob White also lived in Elko. There's been a lot of crimes in Elko, come to think of it. But anyway.
It's in the water.
He was a gambler and a hustler, I guess you would say. And he got in an argument with some former partners and chased one of them down and shot and killed him. So the guy he shot and killed was a pretty popular guy in town. So, of course, if you ask about the death penalty, it's been handed down a lot of times in Elko. And if you look at how many have been convicted and given the death penalty, there's been a lot in Elko. And he was one of them. He was given the death penalty for the murder. And he didn't fight it. A lot of times people will appeal. He didn't. He went on, visited his wife while he's waiting to be executed. And on the day of his execution, the warden comes in and asks, so what, you have any last requests? And Bob White said, well, yes, I do. I'd like a gas mask, please, because he was going to the gas chamber. So, yeah, he wanted a gas. I'd say that's a pretty smart request.
Right?
I wonder if it would have worked. I doubt if it would have even saved him because, they say the fumes and everything, once they execute somebody in the gas chamber, they have to wait several hours before they can go in and remove the body. So because of the fumes and everything, or whatever it attaches to the clothes, and it's still deadly from so it probably wouldn't have saved him anyways, but it was a pretty sensible request, I think so.
Well, it was very witty. Wanted to go out with a joke. You can't go wrong with that. Laughter is the best medicine, I say. Now, with Virginia City kind of being this kind of catalyst city, kind of like Tombstone and things like that have this rich history with gangs and crime and cowboys. Now, did the mob, as the years went on, did the mafia ever kind of deal with it, Virginia City being so close to Las Vegas and Reno and things like that?
No, Babyface Nelson was in Reno, and some say he was responsible. We had a man, Roy Fritch, disappeared in 1934, and they've never found his body. And some say it was Babyface Nelson because he was in town at the time, and he was working for some casino owners as their chauffeur. And a man in Alcatraz later confessed and said he helped Babyface Nelson kill Roy Fritch. But that said, during Prohibition, there were a lot of illegal stills around, and rumor has it that there were some in Virginia City, but I haven't seen absolute proof. The closest I would say to an underworld, if you want to say, figure would be Joe Conforti, who was a former owner of the Mustang Ranch brothel. And he ran to Bolivia, I believe, to escape, not to pay his tax. He owed the government a lot of tax. I mean, you could do something, which in this state, brothels, it's legal in certain areas, certain cities and certain counties. Prostitution is legal. Not in Reno and not in Las Vegas, but in certain counties. And he had his in Story County, which prostitution is legal in Story County. But for some, he wasn't paying his income tax. And you remember they got Al Capone because he was doing a lot of stuff illegally. It didn't matter. The government still wanted their percentage. They wanted their tax, man. And he didn't pay. So in order to avoid that and avoid going to prison for a very long time, Joe Conforti packed up and ran to Brazil, where he married and had children and wrote a book too. He wrote a really good book with an author here since passed, David Toll. It's got a long title, but it's a good book. And so that he was in jail off and on in Virginia City because of laws he was breaking and things. But that's the closest I would say to an actual mafia type person.
Yeah, because it seems like back in the Tommy gun days, they had these outposts everywhere. Like these little if they were trying to during Prohibition, trying to get alcohol to Vegas or whatever, they would they would go on these all little outlying cities around and store their alcohol there or have it as a drop off point. So I was just wondering if Virginia City was ever involved in stuff like that, because that would be kind of a cool, rich history as well as the Wild West. It's kind of cool. You see these towns, these old towns that have lived centuries and have such a rich history, and you see how the decades or the centuries, how it's changed
and how the crime has changed. It's kind of cool to see all that. So now, what were there any type of what was, I guess you would say, like, I don't want to say prostitution, but like, was Virginia City kind of rich with brothels and things like that? Because that always leads to crime. I mean, you always have a poor girl who's trying to make a buck and she ends up getting murdered.
You're thinking of Julia Bellette. Yeah, in 1867, she was the town darling. And that's just what she was, trying to make a buck. And somebody came into her room and murdered her. And John Mullane was arrested and convicted. Some people to this day don't think he actually did it. But and I don't know. I still am not sure one way or the other. But nonetheless, he was convicted. His case went to the Nevada Supreme Court, and they said, you're guilty. So he was hanged in Virginia City for her murder because she was very beloved. And even today, that's over 150 years ago, 160 years ago. Even today, if you want to argue with somebody in Virginia City, just say something not very positive about Julia Bellette. And you'll probably get an argument because she's very revered. There's even a statue, a wooden statue of Julia Bellette on the main street, C Street, at a restaurant there. So, yeah. It basically was, silver was discovered up there in 1859. And of course, that was the silver rush. The California gold rush was played out. So the people who ran there to make their fortune and didn't make it came running to Nevada, to Virginia City. And some of them made their fortune, not all, but where there's men with a lot of money and they didn't bring their wives or their girlfriends. Well, of course, there's ladies working the streets and the brothels who are going to come up here because they're going to help these guys dispose of some of their money. Yeah. So that's true. It's been popular since it's been going on. Well, it had been going on in Virginia City since 1859.
Yeah, it seems like after the Civil War, and then you had the railroad boom, and then you had the mining boom with silver and gold. It just drew so many different cultures and types of people to one town. You're going to have some conflict. I mean, there was a lot of crime and conflict just at these places. I don't know what they call them, like station cities, where the city basically moves with what they're doing. So if they were building the railroad, their town is moving along the railroad as they build it. So, you get this mix of different cultures. I mean, you had the Chinese people were over here and they were treated like crap dealing with the railroads. Same with the freed slaves. A lot of them ended up working for the railroad. So you have Asians, you have African Americans, you have, white people, and you have people that fought for the Confederacy, all piled into a town. You're going to have some problems. And I don't understand why they didn't have a better law system. Why was it so chaotic and anarchy on the Wild West when it came to crime and punishment over there?
Well, in Virginia City, actually, it was more, and I get called on this by the historians, as if I put up a cowboy picture of Virginia City, they don't like it because actually it began as a miner's town, a mining town. They say it wasn't a cowboy town. It was a mining town. Now, we did have shootouts. They did have shootouts and they had gunslingers, but basically it was the miners. And you're right. They came from Mexico. They came from Ireland, Scotland, all over the world. And they did fight. And Irish, because they made fun of the Irish, and the Irish made fun of the Mexicans, and the Mexicans made fun of the Chinese, and they did fight. And these miners were tough too. It wasn't just gunslingers that would shoot you at the drop of the hat. The miners did the same. I mean, some of the reasons, you read the history of the killings and things in Virginia City, and you think life was very cheap. Of course, these people were very young, in their 20s, were saying So I think at 20, you may look at life a lot differently than you do at 40. At 20, you're going to
Right.
live forever. Come on. So there's one case where a man walked into a bar at the International Hotel, and
Mm-hmm.
she was talking to another guy, Bill Smith, and I guess he took offense. He thought the guy was making fun of him. He just shot the guy in the head. So ultimately, he himself was lynched. And we had, I think, 2 lynchings up there for similar stuff. Rather than wait for justice, wait for the person to go to trial. Boy, the 601, which is a group of vigilantes, they just went right in there and took this guy right out of the jail and hanged him. And they did that they did it in California, Nevada. But we had policemen, and now we have sheriff, but we had policemen in those days. It wasn't that we didn't have them. And oftentimes they were as bad as the bad guys. I mean, they would shoot people for no reason and things like that too. But it was just, they were young, they were working hard, they drank too much, they partied too much. And I think that's what caused a lot of the violence and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, when you have people living in just dire circumstances, crappy conditions, being poor, you're gonna have some issues. And I've watched a lot of like documentaries, and I love TV series that take a real event or a real historical thing and add, fictional characters to them. One show that I am referencing a lot is Hell on Wheels. Right now.
Yeah, that's a great show.
Great show, and it really showcased what those guys went through post the Civil War. It was crazy because you had the African American, they were freed slaves now, but they were still treated as if they were. So it was just like they were trying to make their way in the world at that same time, and our country was still kind of torn from the war. I mean, you had sour grapes from the South and things like that. So yeah, it was kind of, I think, the Wild West. That it just seems like it was kind of a bomb waiting to go off eventually, and boom, and then you had all this crime going on. And I know that Virginia City is really rich in the paranormal and hauntings. So a lot of the hauntings there are related to crimes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's very true.
Most of the stories, like same with probably Reno, I'm assuming. But do you have any cool ghost stories? We're going to take a break after this. But when we come back, I want to hear a cool ghost story at one of the places, like at the Washoe Club or something in Virginia City. But I do want to talk about this character named Tony. And Tony seemed to want to get around with some women. Is that correct? He's kind of a ladies' man. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk about a cool ghost story in Virginia City, some haunting, and then we're also going to talk about this Tony character. We have Janice Oberding, who is with us. She is the author of many books on Virginia City hauntings, true crime, you name it. I will have her author page from Amazon in today's description, so you can check out all of her books. And the upcoming book that she will be coming out with some of these stories in it is Virginia City's amazing, somewhat quirky history in The Body in the Basement. So that's what I want to talk about next after the break, and we'll be right back.
Did you know that radio just got a little extraterrestrial? That's right, Dave Schrader is back on radio with the Paranormal 360 every Sunday evening, 7 to 9 p.m. Central on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station. Just download the Odyssey app and look for the WCCO logo, follow the station, and listen live. That's the Paranormal 360 on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station. Hey, you, come here. Winnie Schrader here from Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot podcast, and I got a little secret to share with you. Are you an author, podcaster, comedian, or an online seller that needs a little help in the digital creation department? Well, I'm your hired gun. From graphics, book covers, press kits, radio tours, merch designs, audio editing, podcasting, and producing. Sure, you can do it all yourself, but all those design tools and stuff to make your promotion pop adds up. CapCut Pro, $8 a month. Canva Pro, $15 a month. ChatGPT 4, $10 a month. Midjourney, $10 a month. Adobe Audition, $23 a month. Plus, you have to do all the editing and all the tedious stuff that comes along with being a digital creator, author, or comedian to help promote yourself. That's where I come in at a lower cost than similar competitors, because I know the anxiety and stress that it takes to make your mark in the world on a mac and cheese budget. You'll get one-on-one collaboration with me because this baby belongs to you, and I want to make sure what I'm doing is what you want and how you want it. For more information, visit wsmedia.press. The links are in today's description. Let me do all the legwork for you. That way you can focus on your passion. Again, the website is wsmedia.press, and let's just make some magic together.
Okay, and we're back. Now, before the break, I mentioned that we're going to talk about a ghost story that may involve a crime that's really cool that Janice knows about in the Virginia City, Reno, Nevada area. And then we're going to talk about Tony Harvey, this ladies' man who decided to just kind of keep on committing crime. It just didn't stop. So apparently he was just a bad seed. So, okay. So do you have like a cool ghost story that involves like a cool crime and like people with their experiences, that have investigated there? Like, have people heard shotguns, or have people heard like a deck of cards? Because, gambling and everything. Have people heard like cards being shuffled or anything like that?
Well, I have one. It's in downtown Reno, actually, on the bridge, and people have encountered a ghost of a man. Luis Ortiz was his name, and he worked at a Winnemucca ranch, and he liked to drink and party on his nights off. And he came into town one night and was drinking and having a great old time and shooting the place up. And the constable told him, "You got to leave town, man. You got to leave town." So he escorted him to the train, put him on the train, waved him away. Well, that lasted about 2 weeks. And then here come Luis Ortiz back to town. Oh. This time he's shooting at the commercial hotel, and the people are very fearful he's actually going to hurt somebody. So the constable comes in, and Luis shoots and hits the constable in the stomach. Well, they take Luis off to jail, and the newspaper reports the Constable Nash is not going to live. He's going to die because of Luis Ortiz. Mm-hmm. That night, the vigilante group, the 601, broke into the Reno jail, took Luis Ortiz to the bridge, and hanged him.
Wow.
Okay. They left his body up there for 2 days. When they took his body down, Constable Nash made a full recovery. So he was hanged for actually no reason. And I think that's why people have encountered his angry ghost. I mean, I'd be angry too. The man didn't he was disturbing the peace, but he didn't kill anybody. And then I have another quick one in Virginia City. You remember I talked about the man who walked into the International and shot and killed a guy because he was insulting him. His name was Arthur Perkins Hefferner. Okay. They took him to jail. And then from that jail, the vigilantes took him out and hanged him. Well, a few months later, they put a young man in the cell that he had been in. And the young man was screaming, and he didn't want to be in there because he said it was haunted. So I thought, it's pretty cool. And they asked, the sheriff thought, he's just making excuses so he can get out. But they went in. He said, "No, I'll go in with that other man. I'll go in any of these cells, but I don't want to be in that one." So I thought it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. And one thing I really love about this whole era is just how, I'm trying to think of the word, just how colorful
Yes.
colorful all these characters are.
Yes.
And the way that they interacted with each other, I mean, you just don't see that today. And
Thank
just,
God.
like, well, you know what I mean? Like, just to know that somebody just walks at a bar, pulls out a pistol, and shoots you because you insulted him. It's just like, I would be fearful to leave my house, honestly, because I would be afraid if I looked at somebody the wrong way, they were going to shoot me or something like that. It's just crazy. I would have an adrenaline rush every day living there. You feel like you're on Survivor, and you got to see if you can make it till sundown. So now this Tony Harvey character, he seemed to like the ladies, and he seemed to jump from lady to lady. So what was Tony's deal?
Well, Tony was a nice looking man, and he was a crook. He was a hustler, a crook. I look at these stories and I think, I don't know how he talked that woman into it. He talked he divorced his first wife and left her with the children. And then he was sent to prison. He worked on a farm and was sent to prison, I think, for stealing a pig or some kind of crazy thing. They sent him to San Quentin. But he talked his wife, Rose Schwartz, into waiting for him till he got out of San Quentin. I think it was a year. And she did. She waited for him. When he got out, they were married. And he always was one of these guys, he's always got a scheme going on. They were living in California, Northern California. And her daughter married his brother. So that her daughter was his daughter-in-law and his stepdaughter and his sister-in-law. To me right there, that's kind of weird. But anyway, he talked Rose into moving up here to Virginia City. I still can't figure out why she would do that, but she did. Right. She came up here and they moved into a little house on G Street. And by the way, that house is still standing to this day. And they moved in there and they fought a lot. And her daughter came to visit a couple of times. And then all of a sudden, the daughter's not getting any more letters from Rose, not hearing anything. While that's going on, he meets a more attractive woman called Kay O'Brien, and he marries Kay. And while he and Kay are on their honeymoon here in the northern Nevada area, California, Tony's stepdaughter is receiving letters from her mother, postcards saying, "Oh, we're having a wonderful time. We're in Arizona. We're having a great time. We're here. We're there." So she believes her mom. Well, all of a sudden they're traveling, and so she doesn't worry. Okay. And then again, no more letters, no more postcards or anything. Well, it all came to a head on July 31st, 1947. Tony had an ex-wife and children in, I believe, the Stockton area. So, no, he didn't. You would think, okay, so he went to visit his kids. No, not Tony. He didn't go to visit his kids. He didn't go to visit his mom. He went down to visit an old girlfriend. Okay. Yeah, that's how Tony rolled. So he came home that night and walks into the house, and his wife, Kay O'Brien, Louise Kay O'Brien, is cooking lamb chops. She's in the kitchen. She's got her apron on and she's cooking dinner, but she's not cooking it for Tony. She's cooking it for the man on the sofa, who is Louis Barton. Okay. So Tony pulls out a gun and starts shooting at Lewis. "What are you doing in my house? My wife cooking." And Lewis shoots back at Tony. Well, they're both struck in the stomach. Lewis runs out of the house and up, Virginia City streets go up, and running up, I believe, Washington Street, gets stopped by a cop and taken to the hospital. Gunshot wound. Now, this is the weird thing, Winnie. This makes no sense to me. According to Louise Kay, his wife, Tony runs down to the basement, and he had a noose hanging over a rafter. And she says, "What are you doing? You're going to kill yourself." No, it's over anyway. And hangs himself. Now, that doesn't make a damn bit of sense to me. But nonetheless, that's what they told the police. Well, she told the police. Now, I'm going to stop here. I believe that she and Louis Barton killed Tony and then put him up there and hanged him. But they claimed they might have hanged him. That's how he died. Anyway, they told the police that Tony's hanged himself. Okay. The police come. There's Tony's body. They take Tony's body down. And then they remember they keep getting letters from the daughter of the second wife. They don't know where is she. And they happen to see a necklace on the ground, a cross. And they start digging. And there they find Rose's body's there in the basement. Okay. Now, the weird thing is, Kay claims she knew nothing about it. I don't believe that either. But she claims she knew nothing about this at all. I think she lied. I think they killed Tony, and she had also killed his wife, Rose. That's what I think. But the police didn't. And interesting to me, the very odd thing is the sheriff, he was an elderly gentleman. And I guess, sometimes, and when I look at crimes that happen in little towns like that, the police chief or whatever you want to say, back in those days wasn't well trained. Today they're well trained. I mean, but not in those days. In those days they had no training. And he was saying, well, they found hypodermic needles around. He said, well, she may have been diabetic. She may have died, and Tony didn't have enough money to bury her, so he buried her in the basement. Now, what sheriff would make such an outlandish statement? But he did. So
that's weird.
That was it. But the case, what it did do is, up until that time, in July 31st, 1947, prostitution was legal in Virginia City. But the government and stuff had been telling these people in Virginia City, we don't want it going on in our town. We don't want it going on in town. Of course, the city fathers just kind of ignored it until this. And the state said, you can't ignore this anymore. So you're going to have to do something. So they shut down. There was 2 other brothels. They shut them down. And that was the end of legalized prostitution in Virginia City, this case.
Wow. Case.
It's convoluted, I know. It seems that it's just too crazy almost. But the crazy thing is that house is still standing. And the person who lives there, bedroom is there where that basement was and where the body was discovered. So
has anybody said they've had experiences in that house?
They're
paranormal.
No, the person who owns it is very anti-ghost and doesn't want to hear a word you've got to say. I've got to say, anybody's got to say about ghosts. They don't want to hear it. So no.
Oh, I know. And that's sad because it's just like, you could totally have people come to your house and investigate. Although I wouldn't probably want to live there. But it's like the same thing with the Amityville house. Like everybody wanted to see the Amityville house. And like the owners of the house are like, please stop. And I can't imagine living in a house that is so like famous. I mean, Virginia City and all that, I mean, it's not as famous as the Amityville house, but obviously the town people know they have that lore and the legends of house. You know, you always have that creepy house at the end of the street with some guys haunting the house. But that's pretty cool that just that case alone was what shut down prostitution out there. And prostitution out there was a huge business. I mean, every city had brothels. Every city had prostitutes and pimps and madams and stuff like that. Well, thank you so much, Janice. This was really cool. I like to delve into some history once in a while. Sometimes it's you hear about all these modern day serial killers, but this stuff is our history, and people need to start doing critical thinking and look at the past so we don't repeat it in the future, right?
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Janice. I will have some of your social links in today's description. I will also have a link to your author page where people can check out. You have so many books. Not only do you have paranormal, but you do have true crime books as well. You have the Murders, Mysteries, and Misdemeanors of Las Vegas, and then you have a book on haunted Virginia City. I mean, you have a great collection of books, so I urge the listeners to go check out our books. And if you guys buy a book, please rate and review it. It helps the authors to get their books out there and be seen more. That way, everybody can enjoy the same type of things that you guys, because you all think alike. We all love true crime and paranormal with me. So thank you so much, Janice. It's been a pleasure. Okay, I need to go on a little bit of a rant here. I came across this article and it really, really got me upset because it is a hot topic right now with the upcoming election with Trump and Harris, the abortion topic, which there were laws put into place to ban abortion and left it up to the states, basically. And during the presidential debate, President Trump kept reiterating that. The problem that I have with it is this. There was a Texas woman. Actually, there were two of them. But one of the Texas women went to Ascension Williams Hospital in February, and she was dealing with a lot of pain, bleeding, things like that, and they found out she had an ectopic pregnancy. They would not perform an abortion for her because of the laws that have been passed in Texas. But the problem is that these doctors are denying these women health care because they could get fined by the government or whoever sets these fines. But these doctors are getting fined if they perform these procedures, because that's why they're just like, no, I'm not doing it. Because they don't want to fork out the money. Why is that in place in the system? That is the dumbest crap I've ever heard. Why would you tell somebody they can't do it? And if they do it, because they have the Hippocratic Oath, their job is to provide health care and the safety of a person.
With an ectopic pregnancy clearly visible in my ultrasounds, sent home to let it go off inside of me and internally hemorrhage and potentially die. If I had been given information sooner, then I could have made a decision that could have saved my right tube. Having my symptoms be dismissed, my pain be dismissed, it's unacceptable.
The reason that we believe may be behind this is Texas's abortion bans. It is perfectly legal under Texas law to provide treatment for an ectopic pregnancy. That is a clear exception to Texas's abortion bans. But as long as abortion is banned with criminal penalties, a doctor who provides an abortion in Texas in violation of the ban faces life imprisonment, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, and loss of their medical license. As long as abortion is criminalized, doctors are terrified to provide essential health care to their patients.
Well, this woman almost died because her ectopic pregnancy burst, causing her fallopian tube to blow up, and now she's at risk for not being able to have children. Let me tell you, people, all you anti-abortion people, an ectopic pregnancy is not a viable pregnancy. The baby won't even live. It can't grow in the fallopian tube. So now you have doctors who aren't even performing this procedure for women who need it because they don't even have a viable pregnancy, and they're sitting here bleeding. This woman's OBGYN had to fly in from where they were to demand the hospital give her an abortion procedure to get rid of the ectopic pregnancy. This is bullshit. I got some news for you, President Trump. I understand it's a state issue, but abortion shouldn't even be a law to begin with. It shouldn't be on the state level or the federal level. It shouldn't be a law at all. It's a procedure that is done between a doctor and a patient because it's the best care that they both think for that patient. It should not even be discussed in a political setting. It's a healthcare issue. What really ticks me off is this keeps becoming a hot topic issue every election cycle. We need to get this out of the election cycle. We need to make this legal as a medical procedure so that way we don't have to go through this bullshit every freaking election season and having women fear that they can't get the health care that they need. Sorry, it's just me going on a rant, but it just irks me that this is happening. This is happening right now in our country. Rant over. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Janice, and I will see you guys all next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you right here next week on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.